Okay, this is a DIY, part one, on how to make a pair of amazing flare jeans out of a pair of skinny jeans. So what I'm doing here is showing you where I cut the bottom of the pants that I was working on. They are a pair of skinny jeans, as you can see. I also cut out some fabric from another pair of jeans that I bought. And it was just the bottom part, you know, down where the cuff is. And on the inside here, it'll show you how I laid it out with the jeans that were cut. So it's a big rectangle piece, and I spread out the jeans that I'm working on, put the big rectangle from where the cuff is cut on the second pair of jeans. I lined it up where the cuff is on the pair of jeans that I want to keep. So I did that. I basted it, which is a very loose, it's not a loose, it's just a very long stitch. So the stitch length is very long, just to keep the fabric in place. There is a spot where I started to stitch with black thread, but that wasn't working. So that was more, you can consider it more basting. And I've decided to use a yarn, and it is, I believe it is wool, I'm not quite sure, but it is a variegated weight wool, so it's more like something you would find raw off the farm. It's not something that you would find as likely with something you'd find in the store as easy. So that's the type of yarn it is. I don't know if you actually found it in the store. I got mine secondhand. And what I mean by variegated weight is that some pieces on the string are thicker than other pieces on the string. So it's a little bit, it looks a little bit more like wool. It looks like it. I'm not sure what the quality is. I'm not as well versed in my yarn knowledge. So this is variegated. It's got different colors of creams and tans. And the weight, like I said, some parts are thicker and some parts are thinner. So some parts are, I don't know, more tightly wound together. And it's actually a very strong string. It's not like, you know, the loose parts where it's thicker or thinner. It doesn't really matter. It's still pretty strong no matter where you pull on it. And I'm going to use a knitter's needle, which is the thicker needle with a thicker eye, wider eye, so that I can thread this yarn through it. I'm going to have a problem here. You'll see pulling the yarn through the pant leg. The cuff is a very tough place to pull any sort of thick needle through, especially with a thick yarn following it. So you're going to see me try to do that first, and it's not going to work. So I push it up a little further on the pant leg, and I'll show you how to cover the seam where the cuff is later on. The trick I found to making the yarn come through, this is me tying a knot at the other end. And I had threaded my needle, so I'm trying to push it through, and it's not going to come through. I mean, you may be able to get it. A couple tricks are, wiggling it and forcing it, which is like just pulling really, really hard. You can pull the yarn on the other side a little bit tighter, so you just pull on that as you pull on the needle. Sometimes that works. I just couldn't get it. So what I had noticed was that the yarn on the other side of this jean was thick in that spot. So I moved the yarn, you'll see, where I had threaded it down further a little bit so that the yarn right at the eye of the needle was thinner. And that made it easier to pull the yarn through, just like that. Pulled it through to the thinner spot, and it comes through. Now you want to make sure that you pull all the way through. This kind of yarn can get bunched. So there may be times when your string hasn't pulled all the way through to the end, and you want to keep an eye on that. There will also be times when it gathers on the other side of the fabric. Well, really on either side of the fabric. Sometimes it'll get bunched, and you want to keep an eye out for that. Don't just force it through, because either your string will break or It'll just knot and it will stay in a knot, and you don't want it to stay in a knot. So I'm going to keep working on it. Now I'm working on where the seam is. So there's a cut, a raw edge, and I'm working around that. I'm not making it a very wide stitch, but I'm not making a very thin stitch either. I want it to cover the seam pretty well. So I'm making it actually like 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch, more like 1/2 inch wide. And I think that's good for an embroidery look anyway. You really can use any color with this, but the color combination, I wear a lot. I like wearing a lot of neutrals with color. I like wearing a lot of neutrals as a base. So blues, browns, and blacks are kind of like a base color for me. So I'm using this tan color for that reason. But there's the stitch, about a 1/2 inch. Making sure I get the whole seam in there. Now this is all you're going to do for the next 10 minutes, is work your way up the pant leg, making sure that it doesn't get caught, and bunched, and trying to keep a consistent width. It's okay if it varies a little bit. It's a project. It's creativity. You're gonna vary a little bit. I didn't draw lines. You could draw lines to keep a very straight stitch width, but I like a little bit of variety. So here you go. Watch this finish up here, and you'll be able to tie it at the end. Okay, here you go.